The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 12 different species gathered for an emergency session. The massive crystalline structure floating in the void between star systems serve as neutral ground for the most important decisions affecting their corner of the galaxy. Today's meeting, however, carried an urgency that made even the most seasoned diplomats uncomfortable. Ambassador Vexthera of the Zolonian Empire adjusted her breathing apparatus as she reviewed the disturbing reports scrolling across her neural interface. The Zolonians had always prided themselves on their advanced technology and strategic thinking, but the data before her challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare and survival. "The situation has deteriorated beyond our worst projections," announced High Counselor Mordak, his 4 eyes scanning the assembled delegates. The Thraxian leader's usually calm demeanor showed cracks of genuine concern. 3 more colony worlds have fallen to the Void Hunters in the past rotation cycle. Their biomechanical ships continue to adapt to our defensive strategies faster than we can develop new ones. A collective shudder ran through the chamber. The Void Hunters had appeared seemingly from nowhere 18 months ago, emerging from the dark spaces between galaxies like a plague of living metal and corrupted flesh. Their ships weren't built. They were grown, evolved, constantly changing their configuration to counter whatever weapons the Council forces threw at them. Every victory against them came at tremendous cost, and every defeat taught them new ways to kill. Our combined fleets have lost 67% of their fighting capacity, reported Admiral Kethvar of the Aquarian Defense Force, his gills fluttering with stress. The Hunter's adaptation rate is unprecedented. Weapons that worked in one battle become useless in the next. They're learning from every encounter. The Crystalline Collective's representative, a being of pure, living mineral called Resonance of Truth, chimed in with harmonic frequencies that the translation devices converted to words. Analysis indicates their bioships incorporate defeated vessel technology directly into their structure. They literally consume our advantages and make them their own. Ambassador Vexthera stood, her scaled hide reflecting the chamber's bioluminescent lighting. The Zolonian strategic computers have run countless simulations. Given current loss rates and adaptation speeds, we have perhaps 6 months before the Void Hunters achieve total tactical superiority. After that point, no conventional force in the galaxy will be able to stop them. The weight of her words settled over the assembly like a funeral shroud. Some species had already begun secret evacuation protocols, preparing to flee to distant galaxies rather than face extinction. Others spoke of last stands and honorable deaths. But beneath the despair, a desperate hope flickered. "There is one option we haven't explored," said Counselor Yiptal of the Corvani Hive Mind, her antenna twitching nervously. "The restricted archives contain references to species from uncharted regions. Worlds so hostile that merely surviving there would forge incredibly dangerous life forms." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew about the restricted archives, but few had clearance to access them. They contained information deemed too dangerous or disturbing for general circulation. Reports of worlds where the very environment was actively trying to kill everything on its surface, species that had evolved not just to survive, but to thrive in conditions that would annihilate most galactic civilizations. "Death Worlders," whispered Admiral Kethvar, using a term that most Council species spoke only in hushed tones. High Counselor Mordak's expression darkened. "The archives classify such worlds as Category X, extreme hazard environments. Any species capable of achieving space flight from such conditions would be," he paused, searching for appropriate words, "fundamentally different from civilized beings. Violent," added Vexthera bluntly. "Aggressive. Unpredictable. The kind of species we've spent centuries evolving beyond." Resonance of Truth is crystalline form, shifted colors, indicating deep contemplation. "The irony is not lost. We face extinction by beings who embody violence and chaos, so we consider summoning other beings who embody violence and chaos. But there's a crucial difference," interjected DR. Zenith from the Healer Collective, her pale blue skin almost translucent in the chamber's light. "The Void Hunters are a galactic cancer, consuming and corrupting everything they touch. theoretical Deathworlder species would have evolved natural selection pressures that favor survival, adaptation, and perhaps even cooperation within their own kind. The debate that followed stretched for hours. Some argued that contacting Deathworlders would simply exchange one existential threat for another. Others pointed out that they were already facing extinction, so the risk might be acceptable. A few suggested that Deathworlder species might be more predictable than the Void Hunters. At least they would be carbon-based life forms with potentially understandable motivations. Finally, High Council Mordak called for order. We need a unanimous decision. Either we maintain our current course and face extinction within 6 months, or we authorize a deep space expedition to contact any Deathworlder species we can locate and request their aid. The vote was closer than anyone expected. Fear of the unknown warred with terror of the certain. In the end, survival instinct won by a single vote. Motion carried, Mordak announced grimly. We will attempt to contact Deathworlder species. May the eternal light preserve us all. 3 days later, the exploration vessel Harmony of Stars departed from the Council's primary shipyard. Its mission was classified at the highest levels, its crew sworn to secrecy. The ship itself was a marvel of galactic cooperation. Zolonian navigation systems, Thraxian defensive screens, Aquarian life support, and crystalline collective computational cores all working in harmony. Captain Silvera of the Elven Confederacy commanded the expedition, her centuries of experience making her the logical choice for such a dangerous mission. Her species had always been natural explorers, their lifespans allowing them to undertake journeys that would span multiple generations for shorter-lived races. Navigation, set course for the galactic rim, she ordered, settling into her command chair. We'll start with the closest potential Deathworld candidates and work our way outward. The ship's artificial intelligence, a hybrid consciousness created by the collective, responded in soothing tones. Course plotted, Captain. Estimated travel time to the first candidate system is 47 standard days. As the Harmony of Stars engaged its hyperdrive and vanished into subspace, none of its crew could have imagined what they would find in the Outer Rim territories. The galaxy's archive that contained tantalizing hints and fragments, references to worlds with crushing gravity, toxic atmospheres, extreme temperature variations, and radiation levels that would sterilize most known life forms. But the reality would prove far more extraordinary than their wildest theories. The first system they investigated orbited a massive red giant star that bathed everything in deadly radiation. The third planet showed signs of atmospheric activity and possibly even liquid water, despite the hostile stellar environment. When they dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge, their sensors immediately detected something that made the entire bridge crew freeze in shock. Captain, whispered the sensor operator, a young Corvani named Zixtal, I'm reading massive electromagnetic signatures from the third planet. They're artificial. Someone is broadcasting radio signals. Captain Silvera felt her blood chill. Radio waves were primitive technology, but they indicated active intelligence. More importantly, any species using radio technology while living this close to a red giant had to possess incredible radiation shielding capabilities. Either that, or they were naturally resistant to radiation levels that would kill most galactic species in minutes. Analysis of the broadcasts? She asked. The ship's AI processed the data streams for several minutes before responding. The signals appear to be entertainment and communication transmissions. Multiple languages are being used simultaneously, suggesting a diverse planetary civilization. Some transmissions show evidence of advanced mathematical concepts, while others appear to be what humans might call music or storytelling. Wait, interrupted Dr. Felnura, the expedition's xenobiologist. Did the AI just say humans? A pause. Affirmative. The translation matrices have identified the dominant species designation as humans or Homo sapiens. Cross-referencing with archive data. No match found in galactic records. Captain Silvera made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Elm, take us into the system, but maintain maximum defensive posture and be ready to jump to hyperspace on my command. As the Harmony of Stars moved deeper into the system, more details about the third planet became clear. It was a blue-green world with vast oceans and continental landmasses, but the environmental readings were terrifying. The gravity was nearly twice galactic standard. The atmosphere contained lethal levels of oxygen, a highly reactive gas that would cause most species to suffer oxygen toxicity within hours. Weather patterns showed massive storm systems with wind speeds that could tear apart spacecraft. "Captain," reported the tactical officer, "I'm detecting artificial structures in orbit around the planet. They appear to be space stations, and there are smaller objects moving between them and the planetary surface." The view screen shifted to show a collection of metallic structures orbiting the Death World, connected by what appeared to be transportation tubes. But what caught everyone's attention were the smaller craft, sleek, angular vessels that moved with purpose and efficiency between the orbital installations and the planet below. "Those are spacecraft," breathed Captain Silvera. "They have achieved orbital capability despite living on a world that should have made space travel nearly impossible." The implications were staggering. Any species that could develop space technology while dealing with crushing gravity, corrosive atmosphere, and deadly radiation would have engineering capabilities far beyond anything the galactic community had achieved. Their material science alone would be centuries ahead of Council standards. "Captain, we're being scanned," announced the tactical officer urgently. "Multiple sensor sweeps from different orbital platforms. They know we're here. Evasive action? Negative. The scans are curious rather than hostile. They appear to be trying to determine our origin and capabilities without actually interfering with our systems." Dr. Felnara was studying her biological sensors with growing amazement. "Captain, the life signs from the planet's surface are incredible. The biodiversity readings are off the charts. This world isn't just supporting life despite its hostile conditions. It's absolutely teeming with life. Millions of species all competing and cooperating in an ecosystem of unbelievable complexity." "And the dominant species?" asked Captain Silvera. "Bipedal, carbon-based, approximately 2 meters in height on average. But, Captain, their physiological readings are extraordinary. Bone density 3 times galactic norm. Muscle fiber efficiency that exceeds anything in our database. Cardiovascular systems designed for sustained high-performance activity. They're not just adapted to this death world, they're optimized for it." A new voice cut through the bridge chatter. "Unknown vessel, this is Terra Control. Please identify yourself and state your intentions in our system." The communication had come directly through their main channel without any apparent difficulty accessing their systems. Whoever these humans were, they had impressive electronic capabilities to penetrate Council security protocols so easily. Captain Silvera straightened in her chair. This was the moment that would determine whether they had found salvation or doom for the galaxy. "Terra Control, this is Captain Silvera of the Galactic Council ship Harmony of Stars. We come seeking dialogue with your species on a matter of grave importance to our civilizations." A pause that seemed to stretch forever. "Roger that, Harmony of Stars. You're cleared for approach to Orbital Station Alpha. Be advised that your ship design is unlike anything in our databases. We'd very much like to know where you came from and how you found us. Please follow the guidance beacons and maintain current speed. Welcome to the Sol System." As the Harmony of Stars followed the guidance signals toward the massive orbital station, Captain Silvera couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to encounter something that would fundamentally change their understanding of what was possible in the universe. The readings from this Terra world suggested a species that had not merely survived impossible conditions, but had thrived in them. Behind them, the galaxy burned under the assault of the Void Hunters. Ahead of them, a blue-green death world spun peacefully in the deadly embrace of a red giant star, home to a species that might be either their salvation or their doom. The bridge crew of the Harmony of Stars watched in tense silence as the orbital station grew larger on their view screen. Whatever happened next would determine the fate of 12 civilizations and perhaps the entire galaxy itself. The docking procedure at Orbital Station Alpha proved to be an education in human engineering capabilities. The station itself was a marvel of brutal efficiency. No elegant curves or artistic flourishes that characterize Council architecture, just functional geometric shapes designed to withstand the punishment of operating in a high-radiation environment near a red giant star. The docking clamps that secured the harmony of stars were clearly overbuilt by galactic standards, capable of handling ships several times larger and heavier than necessary. Captain Silvera had chosen a minimal first contact team. Herself, Dr. Felnera, the xenobiologist, Ambassador Vextera for diplomatic protocols, and Lieutenant Commander Cothran as security escort. As they prepared for their first face-to-face meeting with a Deathworlder species, each team member checked their environmental suits multiple times. The atmospheric composition aboard the human station would be toxic to most of them. Remember, Captain Silvera addressed her team through their suit communicators. These beings evolved on a world that should have been impossible to survive on. Everything about them will be adapted for extreme conditions. Stay alert, but avoid any actions that might be interpreted as hostile. The airlock cycled with a heavy mechanical precision that spoke of redundant safety systems. When the inner door opened, the council delegation got their first look at actual humans. The welcoming committee consisted of 3 individuals wearing what appeared to be light-duty uniforms rather than environmental suits. They breathed the station's atmosphere without assistance, confirming that the oxygen levels that would kill most galactic species were actually their normal environment. The humans were indeed bipedal, but their physical presence was immediately imposing in ways that the sensor readings hadn't fully conveyed. The lead human stepped forward with fluid movements that suggested incredible physical control. Despite the higher-than-standard gravity, he moved with easy confidence that made the council delegates feel clumsy in comparison. When he extended his hand in what was clearly a greeting gesture, Captain Silvera noticed that his forearm muscles were clearly defined even through his uniform sleeve. Captain Silvera, welcome to Station Alpha. I'm Commander David Shun, Station Administrator. This is Dr. Sarah Mitchell, our xenobiology specialist, and Chief Warrant Officer James Rodriguez, Head of Station Security. The humans' voices carried easily through the atmosphere, but the translation software struggled with some of their verbal nuances. There were emotional undertones and cultural references that didn't translate properly, suggesting a complex social structure. We appreciate your hospitality, Commander Chun, Captain Silvera replied, hoping her translator was conveying appropriate respect. May I present Dr. Felnera, Ambassador Vexera, and Lieutenant Commander Cothran of my crew. Dr. Mitchell stepped forward, her eyes bright with curiosity. Forgive my enthusiasm, but this is extraordinary. We've theorized about extraterrestrial life for centuries, but you're our first confirmed contact with off-world intelligence. Your ship design suggests technology we haven't seen before, especially that exotic matter drive system. The casual way she analyzed their advanced propulsion technology was unsettling. Most galactic species required specialized education to understand exotic matter manipulation. This human spoke of it as though identifying an interesting engineering choice. Commander Chin gestured toward a corridor. We've prepared a conference room where we can talk more comfortably. I'm sure you have questions about our world, and we definitely have questions about yours. As they walked through the station's corridors, the council delegation observed everything with professional interest and growing unease. The construction was massively overbuilt by galactic standards. Walls thick enough to stop military-grade weapons, corridors wide enough to move heavy equipment quickly, and structural supports that could probably withstand direct asteroid impact. Everything suggested a species that built for worst-case scenarios as standard practice. Your station appears designed for significant defensive capability. Observe Ambassador Vextera diplomatically. Chief Rodriguez nodded. Standard practice. Space is a hostile environment, and Sol system has its share of hazards. Asteroid impacts, solar radiation bursts, equipment failures. You plan for everything that can go wrong, then plan for things you haven't thought of yet. The casual mention of preparing for unknown disasters said volumes about human psychology. Most galactic species built for known hazards with reasonable safety margins. Humans apparently built for unknown hazards with excessive safety margins. The conference room was a study in functional design. The furniture was clearly built to accommodate various body types, suggesting these humans regularly dealt with physical diversity even within their own species. A large display screen showed a real-time view of the planet below, its blue and white surface looking deceptively peaceful from orbit. Before we begin formal discussions, Commander Chen said as they settled around the table, I need to ask, what brings you to our system? Your ship clearly has faster-than-light capability, which puts you centuries ahead of our current technology. You didn't find us by accident. Captain Silvera exchanged glances with her team. They had discussed how much to reveal initially, but the directness of the human question demanded an honest response. Commander, we come from the Galactic Council, a cooperative organization of 12 spacefaring species. Our region of the galaxy is facing an existential threat from an enemy we call the Void Hunters. We're searching for allies capable of helping us survive. The three humans absorbed this information with remarkable calm. Dr. Mitchell leaned forward slightly. 12 species in a galactic organization? How large an area are we talking about? Approximately 8,000 star systems across a spiral arm segment, replied Ambassador Vexthera. And your enemy defeated all 12 civilizations? Asked Chief Rodriguez, his tone suggesting military interest rather than intimidation. They didn't defeat us, Lieutenant Commander Cothran corrected. They're in the process of consuming us. The Void Hunters adapt to our technology faster than we could develop new weapons. Every battle teaches them how to be more effective against us. Commander Chan was quiet for a moment, then asked, what makes you think we could help where 12 advanced civilizations have failed? Captain Silvera decided on complete honesty. Your world is classified as a Category X extreme hazard environment. Any species that achieved spaceflight from such conditions would have capabilities far beyond standard galactic norms. You're what we call Death Worlders. The term caused an interesting reaction among the humans. They exchanged quick glances that seemed to convey entire conversations. Then, Dr. Mitchell actually laughed. Death Worlders? I suppose that's one way to look at Earth. Though from our perspective, this is just home. Your planet has gravity nearly twice galactic standard, Dr. Felnara pointed out. Atmospheric oxygen levels that would cause toxicity in most species. Weather systems that routinely generate destructive force equivalent to military weapons. Radiation exposure from your star that would be lethal to most life forms. Chief Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. Sure, Earth can be rough. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, solar storms. But that's just Tuesday for us. You adapt or you die. The casual dismissal of conditions that would sterilize most worlds was exactly what the council delegation had hoped to find, but it was still shocking to hear it stated so matter-of-factly. Tell us about these Void Hunters, Commander Chen requested. Tactical capabilities, technology level, organizational structure. For the next 2 hours, the council delegation provided detailed briefings about their enemy. The humans listened with professional attention, occasionally asking precise questions that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of military tactics and technology. When Captain Silvera finished describing how the biomechanical ships adapted to new weapons, Commander Chun was nodding slowly. Adaptive technology based on evolutionary principles, he summarized. They're essentially running accelerated natural selection on their military hardware. Each encounter gives them genetic information to breed better variants. That's an unusually accurate analysis, admitted Dr. Felnara. Most species struggle to understand the concept. Dr. Mitchell smiled. Evolution is fundamental to understanding life on Earth. We've been dealing with rapidly adapting organisms our entire history. Viruses, bacteria, parasites, they all evolve countermeasures to whatever we throw at them. The Void Hunters sound like a macro-scale version of the same process. The question, said Chief Rodriguez, is whether our experience with Earth-based evolution gives us any advantages your people haven't considered. Ambassador Vexthera leaned forward. What kind of advantages? Well, Commander Chun said slowly, evolution requires selection pressure. On Earth, that pressure comes from competition, environmental hazards, and resource scarcity. But evolution also requires time and population. If we could disrupt either the time element or the population element. He was describing strategic concepts that the Council's best military minds had never considered. The humans were approaching the problem from a completely different angle based on their unique evolutionary experience. There's another factor, Dr. Mitchell added. Earth's history includes multiple extinction events. Asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, climate changes that wiped out most life on the planet. But some species always survive by being adaptable rather than just adapted. Generalists rather than specialists. You're thinking like survivors, Captain Silvera realized. Most galactic species think like civilized beings who build technology to protect themselves from environmental hazards. But you think like evolved predators who use environmental hazards as tools. That's probably a fair assessment, admitted Chief Rodriguez. Earth doesn't just challenge you to survive, it challenges you to thrive. The difference shapes how we approach problems. Commander Chin stood and moved to the display screen showing Earth below. Captain, I need to ask you something important. If we agree to help, what level of commitment would you need? Advisory support? Technology sharing? Active military participation? The question hung in the air like an explosive device. Captain Silvera had hoped for technological consultation at best. The idea that these Deathworlders might actually be willing to fight alongside the Council was beyond her most optimistic projections. Any assistance would be valuable, she said carefully. But active military participation would require Council authorization and extensive coordination between our forces. Understood. But before we make any commitments, we need to understand what we'd be facing. Would it be possible for a human expedition to observe these void hunters in action? Dr. Felnara's translator conveyed her shock clearly. Commander, that would be incredibly dangerous. Even our most advanced warships are barely surviving encounters with them. Dr. Mitchell, Commander Chin asked, what's your assessment? Could our people operate in that environment? The xenobiologist was already calling up data on her personal device. Assuming we can solve the atmospheric compatibility issues for extended operations, our people should be able to function effectively on most galactic standard worlds. The low gravity would actually give us significant advantages in mobility and endurance. And Chief Rodriguez, the commander continued, what about our equipment? Could our systems operate effectively in that environment? Sir, our gear is built for Earth conditions. Most alien environments would probably be easier on the equipment than what we designed for. The question would be whether our weapons are effective against their technology. Captain Silvera was beginning to understand something profound about human psychology. They weren't evaluating whether they could survive helping the Council. They were evaluating whether they could be effective. The assumption of survival seemed to be a given. Commander Chun, she said slowly, I need to ask, are you seriously considering military intervention in a galactic war? The human commander looked at his companions, and, again, that silent communication passed between them. When he turned back to the Council delegation, his expression was serious but determined. Captain, our species has a saying, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. If these void hunters are really threatening to exterminate 12 civilizations, then Earth has a moral obligation to help if we can. The words hit the Council delegation like a physical blow. Throughout galactic history, species had allied for mutual benefit, territorial advantage, or resource access. But moral obligation? The concept was almost incomprehensible. You would risk your people's lives for strangers? Asked Ambassador Vextera. Ma'am, Chief Rodriguez replied, humanity has a long history of fighting for people we've never met. It's what we do. Dr. Mitchell nodded agreement. Besides, if these void hunters are really as adaptive as you described, they'll probably find Earth eventually. Better to fight them now alongside allies than wait for them to show up in Sol System. Commander Chun returned to his seat. Captain Silvera, here's what I propose. Give us access to all your tactical data about the void hunters. Let us analyze their capabilities and your previous engagement records. In return, we'll provide a preliminary assessment of whether human forces could be effective against them. And if your analysis is positive, asked Captain Silvera, then we'll need to talk to our governments about formally joining your war effort. The casual way, he said, it sent chills through the Council delegation. These humans were discussing entering a galactic war as though it were a reasonable policy decision rather than an act of insanity. As the meeting continued into the station's evening cycle, the Council delegates found themselves confronting a species unlike anything in their experience. The humans possessed advanced technology, sophisticated strategic thinking, and physical capabilities that exceeded galactic norms. But, more than that, they possessed something the Council had lost generations ago, the willingness to fight for principles rather than just survival. When they finally returned to the harmony of stars, Captain Silvera faced the most important decision of her career. She could report back to the Council that she had found a potentially powerful ally, but that ally came with unknowable risks. Humans were clearly dangerous in ways that went far beyond their Death World origins. Or she could recommend full diplomatic engagement with a species that might represent the galaxy's only hope against extinction. As she stared at the blue-green world turning slowly below the station, Captain Silvera realized that the Void Hunters had made one crucial mistake. They had forced the galaxy to seek help from species that understood survival at any cost. The humans were about to show the galaxy what Deathworlders could really do. 6 weeks later, the Harmony of Stars returned to Council space accompanied by something that would have been impossible to imagine 2 months earlier, a human expeditionary fleet. 3 vessels followed the Council ship through hyperspace, their design philosophy so radically different from galactic norms that simply looking at them was unsettling. Where Council ships were elegant and efficient, the human vessels were aggressive and purposeful. The lead ship, designated UNS Indomitable, was a heavy cruiser built like a weapon that happened to carry crew rather than a transport that happened to have armaments. Its hull showed the telltale scorching of multiple atmospheric entries, and sensor arrays that suggested it was designed to fight in environments that would destroy most galactic vessels. Captain Silvera had spent the journey back to Council space in constant communication with the human commander, Admiral Elena Vasquez, learning more about human military philosophy with each conversation. The humans didn't just plan to fight the Void Hunters, they planned to win. The confidence was simultaneously reassuring and terrifying. Council Command, this is the Harmony of Stars requesting priority approach clearance, Captain Silvera transmitted as they reached the edge of the primary system. We have urgent intelligence regarding the Void Hunter threat. Harmony of Stars, you are cleared for immediate dock at Command Station. Be advised that the situation has deteriorated during your absence. We've lost 2 more worlds. The news hit the bridge like a physical blow. 2 more worlds meant millions of lives lost and billions more refugees fleeing toward the inner systems. Captain Silvera glanced at the tactical display, showing the human ships maintaining perfect formation behind them, and hoped desperately that she had made the right choice. Captain, came Admiral Vasquez's voice through the communication link. Our sensors are detecting massive defensive installations throughout this system. Your people have been busy. Looking at the sensor displays through human eyes, Captain Silvera saw her own system's defenses differently. What had seemed like impressive fortifications now looked like desperate last stands. Orbital weapons platforms, defensive minefields, and patrol cruiser formations that represented the concentrated military might of 12 civilizations, and all of it had proven inadequate against the Void Hunters. Admiral, these represent our most advanced defensive systems, she replied honestly. They've been effective against conventional threats. Understood, but I'm not seeing any adaptive countermeasures. Your static defenses are impressive, but they're predictable. Against an enemy that learns from every encounter, predictability is fatal. The human observation was accurate and depressing. Council military doctrine had evolved during thousands of years of conflict between relatively stable opponents using established technologies. The Void Hunters had invalidated centuries of tactical development in a matter of months. Docking at Command Station brought the first face-to-face meeting between human representatives and the full Council leadership. The emergency assembly had been called within hours of the Harmony of Stars arrival, with all 12 species sending their highest-ranking available representatives. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as rumors spread about the mysterious Deathworlder allies Captain Silvera had discovered. Admiral Vasquez entered the Council chamber with the confident stride of someone comfortable in any environment. She was accompanied by Colonel Marcus Webb, a tactical specialist, and Dr. Lisa Park, who served as both xenobiologist and cultural liaison. All 3 humans moved with the fluid efficiency that marked their species, but it was their calm assessment of the gathering that most impressed the Council members. Honored counselors, Admiral Vasquez began without ceremony. I'm Admiral Elena Vasquez of the United Nations Space Command. My people have reviewed your tactical data regarding the Void Hunter threat, and we believe we can offer significant assistance. High Counselor Mordak leaned forward in his ceremonial seat. Admiral, we appreciate humanity's willingness to help, but we must be clear about the magnitude of this threat. The Void Hunters have defeated the combined fleets of 12 advanced civilizations. What makes you believe your people can succeed where we have failed? Colonel Webb stepped forward, activating a holographic display that showed detailed tactical analyses. Counselor, your forces have been fighting a conventional war against an unconventional enemy. The Void Hunters use evolutionary adaptation as a weapon system. Every time you engage them with the same tactics, you're training them to counter those tactics. The hologram shifted to show engagement patterns from recent battles. Look at this progression from the Kepler system engagement. Your forces used plasma bombardment in the first encounter and achieved 70% effectiveness. Second encounter, same tactic, 40% effectiveness. Third encounter, 15%. We've observed this pattern, admitted Admiral Kethvar grimly. But we have limited tactical options given our technology base. Dr. Park spoke for the first time. That's exactly the problem. You're thinking like civilized beings trying to preserve your way of life. But the Void Hunters are thinking like predators trying to evolve better hunting strategies. You can't beat evolution with engineering. You beat evolution with better evolution. The concept was so alien that several council members required translation clarification. Most galactic species had long since moved beyond evolutionary pressures through technology and social engineering. The humans were suggesting a deliberate return to more primitive competitive dynamics. Elaborate, requested resonance of truth, the crystalline collective's harmonic tones carrying undertones of curiosity. Admiral Vasquez activated another display showing human tactical doctrine. On Earth, we learned to fight opponents who could adapt to our strategies. Human military history is essentially an arms race where both sides constantly develop new approaches to counter the other side's innovations. We call it asymmetric warfare. For example, Colonel Webb continued, if the enemy adapts to your energy weapons, you switch to kinetic projectiles. If they adapt to projectiles, you switch to chemical warfare. If they adapt to chemicals, you switch to biological agents. The key is to always stay ahead of their adaptation cycle. But Colonel, interrupted Ambassador Vexera, that approach requires constantly developing new weapon systems. The resource expenditure would be enormous. Not necessarily, Dr. Park replied. Human military doctrine emphasizes adaptability over pure technological superiority. We don't just build better weapons. We build weapons that can be rapidly reconfigured for different tactical situations. Flexibility rather than specialization. The humans spent the next 4 hours presenting their analysis of the Void Hunter threat and their proposed countermeasures. Their approach was radically different from anything the Council had attempted, based on principles that most galactic species found uncomfortable to contemplate. You're proposing we abandon defensive strategies entirely, summarized High Counselor Mordak. We're proposing you adopt offensive strategies that deny the enemy time to adapt, Admiral Vasquez corrected. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and never use the same approach twice. Keep them too busy surviving to evolve countermeasures. But, Admiral, said Dar, Zenith from the Healer Collective, that level of sustained offensive operations would require massive military resources. Our civilizations aren't structured for perpetual warfare. Colonel Webb nodded understanding, which is why we're suggesting a joint operation. Human forces take the lead on tactical operations while Council forces provide strategic support, supply lines, intelligence gathering, and system defense. We fight the way we know how to fight. You provide the infrastructure we need to sustain operations. The proposal was simultaneously promising and terrifying. The humans were offering to take primary responsibility for the actual fighting, but that meant placing the galaxy's survival in the hands of species they had known for less than 2 months. Admiral, High Counselor Mordak said carefully, what exactly are you proposing in terms of human force commitment? Full military intervention, Admiral Vasquez replied without hesitation. The United Nations has authorized Operation Galactic Shield, a complete expeditionary deployment to eliminate the Void Hunter threat. The casual way she announced a commitment that could potentially sacrifice millions of human lives sent shockwaves through the chamber. Several council members immediately began urgent consultations with their home governments. Admiral, Captain Silvera asked, may I inquire about the scope of this operation? How many ships and personnel are we discussing? First wave deployment will be approximately 200 vessels with full support infrastructure. Total personnel commitment, around 5 million military and civilian specialists. If the situation requires it, we can expand a deployment significantly. The numbers were staggering. The humans were committing military forces larger than some entire council member civilizations, and they were doing it to help complete strangers fight an enemy that might be undefeatable. Ambassador Vexterov voiced what everyone was thinking. Admiral, forgive my directness, but why? Why would your people risk so much for civilizations you've never met? Dr. Park answered first. Because it's the right thing to do, but also because we've studied your historical records. The Void Hunters aren't just conquering territory. They're sterilizing entire ecosystems. This isn't war, it's galactic genocide. And there's a practical consideration, added Colonel Webb. These biomechanical ships will eventually run out of targets in your region of space. When that happens, they'll start expanding their hunting range. Earth is only about 40,000 light years from your current battle zone. From our perspective, we're fighting for our own survival. We're just doing it in your backyard instead of ours. Admiral Vasquez stood and moved to the central display. Counselors, I won't pretend this will be easy or without cost. Human military doctrine is based on accepting casualties to achieve victory. We're going to lose people in this fight. But the alternative is watching the Void Hunters spread across the galaxy until they reach Earth anyway. What do you need from us? Asked High Counselor Mordak. Tactical control of all military operations against the Void Hunters, complete intelligence sharing, and logistical support for our forces operating in Council space. The debate that followed stretched well into the station's night cycle. Some Council members argued that giving tactical control to an unknown species was too dangerous. Others pointed out that their own tactical approach had proven completely ineffective. The deciding factor came from an unexpected source. A real-time communication from the front lines. Council Command, this is Admiral Kethvar aboard the Triumphant. We're under attack by a massive Void Hunter force at the Rigel system. They're using new weapon configurations we've never seen before. We're taking heavy casualties and requesting immediate reinforcement. The transmission cut to static, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. Another Council fleet was being destroyed while they debated whether to accept human help. Admiral Vasquez, High Counselor Mordak said heavily, "The Council accepts your offer of assistance. What are your orders?" The human admiral was already moving toward the exit. Colonel Webb will coordinate with your logistics department to establish supply lines. Dr. Park will work with your intelligence services to consolidate all tactical data. I need to get our ships into position for immediate deployment to Rigel system. Admiral, Captain Silvera called after her. The Rigel system is defended by the most advanced fleet in Council space. If they're taking casualties, Captain, the Rigel system is about to become our laboratory for testing anti-Void Hunter tactics. By this time tomorrow, we'll know whether human military doctrine can work against these opponents. As the humans departed to prepare for their first engagement against the Void Hunters, the Council chamber remained in shocked silence. They had just committed their civilization's survival to a species that approached warfare like an art form rather than a necessary evil. High Counselor Mordak stared at the tactical displays showing the approaching human fleet. Each ship bristled with weapon systems that violated several galactic treaties, their very design suggesting a species that had not just accepted the necessity of violence, but had perfected it. "May the eternal light preserve us all," he whispered. "What have we unleashed?" Within hours, the first human ships were jumping to hyperspace toward the Rigel system, carrying with them the hopes and fears of 12 civilizations. Behind them, the largest military mobilization in human history was beginning as Earth's industrial capabilities shifted to total war production. The Void Hunters were about to learn why some worlds were called death worlds and why the species that survived them were the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. The Battle of Rigel system would be remembered as the moment when the tide of the galactic war shifted, though none of the participants realized it at the time. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UNS Indomitable as her task force dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, immediately greeted by scenes of devastation that exceeded even the worst Council intelligence reports. "Jesus Christ," whispered Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, the ship's tactical officer, as the main screen filled with the wreckage of what had once been the Council's most formidable defense fleet. Burning hulks of massive warships tumbled slowly through space, their elegant curves twisted into abstract sculptures of destruction. "Contact Admiral Kethvar's flagship," Admiral Vasquez ordered. "I want a real-time tactical assessment before we commit our forces." The response came through static-filled communications that spoke of desperate electronic warfare. "Human vessels, this is Admiral Kethvar aboard what remains of the Triumphant. The Void Hunters have deployed bioships unlike anything we've encountered before. They're using our own weapons signatures against us." Through the communication link, the humans could hear the sounds of battle. Energy weapons discharge, hull breaches being sealed, and the controlled chaos of a ship fighting for its life. Admiral Vasquez studied the tactical display, showing approximately 40 Void Hunter bioships engaged with the remnants of the Council fleet. "Admiral Kethvar, we're seeing the enemy formations on our sensors. They appear to be maintaining standard engagement patterns. Why haven't you been able to establish effective targeting solutions?" A bitter laugh came through the communicator. "Admiral, watch what happens when we engage them." On the tactical display, the humans observe a Council cruiser firing its primary plasma batteries at a Void Hunter bioship. The alien vessel absorbed the energy weapon's fire, its organic hull rippling like liquid metal as it processed the incoming energy. Then, impossibly, the bioship returned fire with identical plasma signatures, but amplified and refined. "They're not just adapting to our weapons," Admiral Kethvar explained grimly. "They're improving them and using them against us. Every shot we fire teaches them how to kill us more effectively." Colonel Webb, monitoring from the Secondary Command Center, identified the tactical nightmare they were facing. "Admiral, the Void Hunters have weaponized evolution itself. They're treating this engagement as a learning laboratory." Admiral Vasquez studied the enemy formations with the cold calculation that had made her one of Earth's premier military strategists. The Void Hunters were indeed using standard engagement protocols, but they were doing so while simultaneously adapting to every weapon the Council forces deployed. It was like fighting an opponent who could copy your fighting style and improve it in real time. "All right," she said quietly. "Time to show them what happens when they try to adapt to something they've never encountered before." Colonel Webb, initiate Protocol 7. "Admiral," Lieutenant Commander Kim asked uncertainly, "are we really going to use kinetic bombardment as our opening move? Against bioships?" "Lieutenant Commander, those bioships have spent months adapting to energy weapons, plasma discharges, and particle beams. Let's see how well they handle a couple tons of tungsten traveling at 30% of light speed." The human fleet reconfigured itself with mechanical precision that spoke of extensive training in rapid tactical deployment. Where Council ships required several minutes to change formation, the human vessels adjusted their positioning in seconds. The UNS Indomitable and her escort vessels began accelerating toward the Void Hunter formations while simultaneously launching a barrage that appeared to Council sensors as simple metal projectiles. Admiral Vasquez, Admiral Kethvar, transmitted urgently, "You're launching unguided kinetic rounds against opponents with demonstrated adaptive capabilities. They'll simply modify their hull composition to..." The transmission cut off as the tungsten projectiles struck their targets. The impact of dense metal hitting biomechanical hulls at relativistic speeds produced explosions that briefly outshone the system's primary star. 3 Void Hunter ships simply vanished in expanding plasma clouds, while 2 others suffered massive structural damage that sent them tumbling out of formation. "Absorb kinetic impact," Admiral Kethvar finished weakly. "How did they not adapt to kinetic weapons?" "Admiral," Colonel Webb explained over the communication link, "adaptation requires time to analyze and respond to threats. Kinetic weapons don't give them time. It's like trying to evolve resistance to being hit by a train. The impact happens faster than biological processes can respond." The Void Hunter reaction was immediate and dramatic. The surviving bioships began rapid structural changes, their hulls thickening and developing armored sections clearly designed to disperse kinetic impact. But the humans had anticipated this response. Phase 2, Admiral Vasquez ordered. Chemical warfare deployment. The human ships launched a second wave of projectiles that the Void Hunters confidently intercepted with their newly adapted armor. The projectiles detonated on impact, but instead of explosive warheads, They released clouds of corrosive chemicals designed to interact destructively with organic compounds. "What the hell?" came a voice from one of the Council ships. "Are they using industrial solvents as weapons?" Dr. Park, monitoring from the fleet science vessel, provided explanation. "The Void Hunters evolved biological adaptation mechanisms, but they're still fundamentally organic. We're attacking their adaptation ability directly by disrupting the chemical processes that allow rapid evolution." The effect was devastating. Void Hunter bioships that had begun adapting to kinetic weapons found their hull modifications dissolving under chemical attack. Ships that tried to adapt to the chemicals found themselves vulnerable to follow-up kinetic strikes. The humans had created a tactical paradox. The enemy couldn't adapt to weapons that prevented adaptation. Admiral Vasquez, Admiral Kethvar's voice carried a tone of amazed respect. "Your people are fighting them like there's some kind of biological infection rather than technological opponents." "Admiral," replied Dr. Park, "that's exactly what they are. The Void Hunters use evolution as technology, but evolution has inherent limitations. It requires time, resources, and stable environmental conditions. Disrupt any of those factors, and evolution becomes a liability rather than an advantage." The battle continued for 6 more hours, but the outcome became clear within the first 30 minutes. Human tactical doctrine proved devastatingly effective against opponents who relied on adaptive technology. Every time the Void Hunters began to develop countermeasures, the humans switched to completely different weapon systems that attacked entirely different vulnerabilities. When the bioships tried to adapt to chemical weapons, the humans deployed biological agents specifically designed to disrupt organic computer systems. When the Void Hunters developed resistance to biological agents, the humans hit them with electromagnetic pulse weapons that overloaded their bioelectrical nervous systems. When they adapted to electromagnetic interference, the humans returned to kinetic weapons with different impact characteristics. "This is impossible," transmitted one of the Council observers aboard the UNS Indomitable. "How did your people develop so many different weapon systems? The logistics alone should be overwhelming." Colonel Webb smiled grimly. "We didn't develop them for this war. We developed them for Earth. When your planet actively tries to kill you with diseases, radiation, extreme weather, and natural disasters, you learn to fight multiple types of threats simultaneously. We just applied our existing knowledge to a new problem." By the end of the engagement, the entire Void Hunter force had been eliminated with minimal human casualties. But more importantly, the humans had demonstrated something that sent shockwaves throughout both Council space and the wider Void Hunter collective. The aliens' adaptation strategy could be turned against them. Admiral Vasquez, Admiral Kethvar said as the two fleets regrouped after the battle, "I need to understand what I just witnessed. Your people fought them like you've been preparing for this specific enemy your entire history." "In a way, we have been," Admiral Vasquez replied thoughtfully. "Earth taught us to fight opponents who could adapt to our strategies. Every disease that developed antibiotic resistance, every predator that learned to avoid our traps, every natural disaster that forced us to develop new survival techniques. They all taught us the same lesson, which is never give your opponent time to adapt. Always stay ahead of the adaptation curve. And, most importantly, make adaptation itself into a vulnerability." The strategic implications were staggering. Within days of the Rigel engagement, human tactical teams were being deployed to every active front where Council forces faced the Void Hunters. The results were consistently devastating for the alien invaders. Bioships that had seemed unstoppable against conventional forces found themselves helpless against opponents who treated their greatest strength as their greatest weakness. But the true measure of human strategic thinking became apparent in the weeks following Rigel. Rather than simply responding to Void Hunter attacks, the humans began proactive operations designed to force the bioships into specific adaptation cycles that the humans could predict and counter. "They're not just fighting the Void Hunters," observed Dr. Felnara during a strategy briefing aboard the UNS Indomitable. "They're training them, teaching them to evolve in specific directions that make them more vulnerable to human weapons." Admiral Vasquez nodded confirmation. Every successful predator species on Earth learned the same basic principle. Control your prey's behavior to make them easier to catch. We're applying that principle on a galactic scale. The Void Hunter Collective, for the first time since their invasion began, found themselves facing an opponent that understood evolution better than they did. Their bioships, designed to adapt and overcome any technological threat, were being systematically guided into evolutionary dead ends by human forces that predicted their adaptation patterns. Admiral, Colonel Webb reported during one strategic planning session, intelligence indicates the Void Hunters are beginning to withdraw from several star systems. They're pulling back from direct engagement with our forces. Interesting. Analysis? Dr. Park consulted her biological assessment reports. I think we've taught them something they never expected to learn, that evolution can be a trap. They're not retreating because they can't fight us. They're retreating because fighting us makes them weaker. The irony was perfect. A species that had conquered most of a galactic arm through superior adaptation had encountered opponents who used adaptation as a weapon against them. The hunters had become the hunted. But Admiral Vasquez knew that tactical victories, however impressive, were only the beginning. The Void Hunters still controlled thousands of star systems and billions of bioships. Defeating them in individual engagements was not the same as winning the war. Colonel Webb, she ordered, begin Phase 3 preparations. It's time to take this fight to their primary staging areas. Admiral Kethvar asked during their next communication, what exactly is Phase 3? We're going to teach the entire Void Hunter Collective what Earth taught us. Admiral Vasquez replied with a cold determination that marked her species. That there are worse things in the universe than extinction. Sometimes survival requires becoming something even more dangerous than the thing trying to kill you. The galaxy was about to learn why humans called their world a death world, and why the species that survived such places were the most terrifying predators in the universe. 6 months after the Battle of Rigel, the human expeditionary force had grown into something that defied every assumption the Galactic Council had made about warfare, strategy, and the nature of civilization itself. What began as Operation Galactic Shield had evolved into the largest military mobilization in recorded galactic history, with over 2 million human personnel deployed across 40 star systems and a supply chain that stretched back to Sol System. Admiral Vasquez stood in the primary operations center aboard the UNS Prometheus, humanity's newest command vessel, studying holographic displays that showed the current state of the war against the Void Hunters. The transformation was remarkable. Where 6 months ago the aliens had controlled nearly 60% of Council space, they now held less than 20%, and that remaining territory was shrinking daily. Admiral, reported Captain Torres, the fleet's intelligence coordinator, long-range reconnaissance confirms that the Void Hunters have established a primary staging area in the Kepler Nebula. Our estimates suggest approximately 10,000 bioships are concentrated there, including vessels we haven't encountered before. The Kepler Nebula represented the ultimate test of human military doctrine. Intelligence indicated that the Void Hunters had withdrawn their most advanced bioships to this location, where the dense stellar matter provided both protection from long-range surveillance and ideal conditions for their organic technology to undergo rapid evolution. If they were to make a final stand, it would be there. Assessment from the xenobiology team? Admiral Vasquez asked. Dr. Park stepped forward, her expression showing the strain of months spent analyzing alien evolution patterns. Admiral, we believe the Void Hunters are attempting something unprecedented. The Kepler concentration isn't just a defensive position, it's an evolutionary laboratory. They're trying to develop new bioship variants that can counter human tactical doctrine. The concept was both fascinating and terrifying. The aliens had recognized that their standard adaptation strategies were ineffective against human forces, so they were attempting to evolve entirely new approaches to warfare. It was like watching natural selection operate on a strategic scale. Time estimate for this evolution process? Asked Colonel Webb. Unknown, but probably measured in months rather than years. The concentration of bioships in such a small area would accelerate evolutionary exchange between different vessel types. They could develop completely new capabilities very quickly. Admiral Vasquez studied the tactical projections with the careful attention that had made her Earth's premier strategic thinker. The Void Hunters were essentially betting their entire invasion force on one massive evolutionary experiment. If they succeeded, they would emerge from the nebula with capabilities that might neutralize human advantages. If they failed, they would have concentrated their remaining forces in a location where human weapons could eliminate them en masse. "Admiral," came a voice from the communication station. "We're receiving a transmission from High Counselor Mordak. He's requesting immediate consultation regarding the Kepler situation." The holographic image of the Thraxian leader materialized in the operations center, his four eyes showing strain that spoke of months of desperate warfare. Behind him, other council representatives could be seen, their various species united by the shared experience of fighting for their civilization's survival. "Admiral Vasquez," the High Counselor began without preamble. "Our long-range sensors confirm massive Void Hunter concentration in the Kepler Nebula. Our strategic analysis suggests they're preparing for a final assault that could overwhelm our remaining defenses." "Counselor," Admiral Vasquez replied, "human intelligence reaches the same conclusion, but we believe their actual strategy is different. They're not preparing to attack. They're preparing to evolve." She activated the tactical display, showing the nebula's interior structure. The Void Hunters have realized that conventional adaptation can't counter human weapons. So they're attempting accelerated evolution in an environment that maximizes genetic exchange between different bioship types. "The implications are terrifying," added Dr. Park. "If they succeed, they could emerge with capabilities we've never encountered. Bioships that don't rely on adaptation might be immune to our current tactical approaches." High Counselor Mordak was silent for a moment, then asked the question that everyone was thinking. "Admiral, can human forces successfully assault the Kepler concentration before this evolution process completes?" "Yes," Admiral Vasquez replied without hesitation. "But not through conventional military action. The nebula's stellar matter would interfere with most of our weapon systems. We need a different approach." "What kind of approach?" asked Ambassador Vexthera, who had been present for the original first contact with humanity. Admiral Vasquez exchanged glances with her senior staff before answering. "We're going to use the Void Hunters' evolutionary strategy against them. But instead of letting them control the evolution process, we're going to guide it ourselves." The concept was so alien that several council members required translation clarification. The humans were proposing to deliberately influence enemy evolution rather than simply destroying enemy forces. Colonel Webb activated a new display showing human strategic planning. "The Void Hunters have concentrated their bioships in an environment ideal for genetic exchange. We're going to introduce genetic material that will corrupt their evolution process. Elaborate, requested resonance of truth." Dr. Park took over the explanation. "On Earth, we've dealt with invasive species that threatened entire ecosystems. The most effective countermeasure isn't always direct extermination. Sometimes it's introducing genetic modifications that make the invasive species self-limiting." "You're talking about biological warfare on a scale never before attempted," said Dr. Zenith from the Healer Collective, her pale blue skin showing signs of deep distress. "We're talking about using evolution as a weapon system," Admiral Vasquez corrected. "The Void Hunters weaponized evolution first. We're just applying it more effectively." The strategy that human military scientists had developed was elegantly vicious. Rather than attacking the concentrated bioships directly, they would introduce modified genetic material into the nebula itself. The Void Hunters' own evolution process would spread this material throughout their fleet, but the modifications were designed to create evolutionary dead ends rather than improvements. "The beauty of this approach," explained Colonel Webb, "is that the Void Hunters will do most of the work themselves. Their accelerated evolution process will distribute our genetic modifications faster than we could through conventional weapons." "And the end result?" asked High Counselor Mordak. "Bioships that evolve themselves into non-viability," Dr. Park replied grimly. "The genetic modifications will initially appear beneficial, encouraging the Void Hunters to incorporate them widely. But over time, they'll cause critical system failures that the bioships won't be able to adapt away from." The proposal sparked hours of debate among council representatives. Some argued that biological warfare violated every principle of civilized conduct. Others pointed out that the Void Hunters had already demonstrated willingness to commit galactic genocide. The discussion was ultimately settled by a simple question from Admiral Kethvar. "If we don't do this, what alternative do we have?" The answer was uncomfortable but clear. Conventional military action against 10,000 bioships would require resources that the Council simply didn't possess. Even human forces, for all their tactical superiority, couldn't guarantee victory against such concentrated opposition. The genetic warfare approach offered the only realistic chance of eliminating the Void Hunter threat permanently. Admiral Vasquez, High Counselor Mordak, said heavily, "The Council authorizes Operation Evolution's end. May the eternal light forgive us all." The actual implementation of the operation took 3 weeks of careful preparation. Human biowarfare specialists worked around the clock to develop genetic modifications that would appear beneficial to Void Hunter evolution algorithms, while containing delayed activation failure mechanisms. The delivery system required specially modified probes that could penetrate the nebula's stellar matter and release their payloads without detection. "Final systems check," Admiral Vasquez announced as the human fleet took position at the edge of the Kepler Nebula. "All ships report readiness status." "Admiral," reported the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from within the nebula. It's coming from the Void Hunter concentration." The message that appeared on the main screen was unlike anything the humans had encountered before. Instead of the usual biomechanical communications, this was clearly an attempt at direct linguistic contact. The translation software struggled with concepts that didn't exist in any known language. "Death World Predators," the message began. "Your tactics demonstrate understanding of evolution beyond our projections. We propose cessation of hostilities and negotiated partition of galactic territories." The offer sent shockwaves through both the human command structure and the Council representatives monitoring the operation. The Void Hunters, who had never shown any inclination toward negotiation, were essentially offering to surrender half the galaxy in exchange for peaceful coexistence. "Admiral," Dr. Park said urgently, "this could be exactly what we hope to avoid. If they're willing to negotiate, maybe we don't need to use biological weapons." Or, Colonel Webb countered, "This is exactly why we need to use them. They're offering to negotiate because they realize they can't defeat us militarily. But territorial partition just gives them time to develop new evolution strategies." Admiral Vasquez studied the alien message with the cold calculation that marked human strategic thinking. They're not offering peace. They're offering a temporary ceasefire while they complete their evolution process. In 5 years, 10 years, they'll emerge from the nebula with capabilities we can't counter. "Admiral," High Counselor Mordak's voice came through the communication link. "Surely negotiated peace is preferable to biological warfare?" "Counselor," Admiral Vasquez replied, "there are some opponents you can't negotiate with because negotiation itself is part of their strategy. The Void Hunters aren't offering peace, they're buying time." The decision to proceed with Operation Evolution's end was made in the cold mathematics of survival. The genetic warfare probes launched into the nebula's stellar matter, their payloads designed to appear as beneficial mutations while carrying the seeds of eventual system failure. The results exceeded even human projections. Within days, long-range sensors detected massive bioship activity within the nebula as the Void Hunters eagerly incorporated the new genetic material into their evolution process. The aliens' own acceleration of genetic exchange distributed the modified material throughout their entire fleet faster than any weapon system could have achieved. "Admiral," Dr. Park reported after a week of monitoring, "we're detecting the first signs of system failures in bioship formations. The genetic modifications are causing cascade failures in their organic computer systems." "Estimate for complete effect?" asked Admiral Vasquez. 2 to 3 weeks for total fleet degradation. The bioships won't just become non-functional. They'll become incapable of sustained biological activity. The end, when it came, was both swift and absolute. The massive bioship concentration in the Kepler Nebula began experiencing systematic organic failures that their evolution process couldn't counter. Ships that had survived countless battles simply ceased to function as their corrupted genetics made continued existence impossible. "Admiral," reported Captain Torres, "long-range sensors confirm that all bioship signatures in the nebula have gone dark. The Void Hunter fleet appears to be completely non-functional." The silence that followed was profound. After months of desperate warfare, the galaxy's greatest threat had been eliminated not through superior firepower, but through superior understanding of the evolution process that the aliens had weaponized. Admiral Vasquez, High Counselor Mordak's voice carried tones of amazed gratitude. On behalf of the Galactic Council and 12 billion sentient beings, I thank you and your people for saving our civilizations. Counselor, Admiral Vasquez replied, this was never about saving your civilizations. This was about preventing galactic genocide. Any species capable of interstellar travel has a right to exist and develop according to their own choices. As the human fleet began returning to Council space, leaving behind the lifeless hulks of what had once been the galaxy's most dangerous threat, Admiral Vasquez reflected on what the war had revealed about humanity's place in the galactic community. Earth's children had proven themselves capable not just of surviving in hostile environments, but of thriving in conflicts that challenged the very nature of evolution itself. But more than that, they had demonstrated something that would echo throughout galactic history. That true strength came not from superior technology or overwhelming firepower, but from the willingness to make hard choices in defense of principles that transcended species boundaries. The galaxy was safe, but it was also forever changed. The Deathworlders had arrived, and the universe would never be quite as dangerous a place for those who valued life, freedom, and the right to exist among the stars. The Void Hunters had learned, too late, that there were worse things in the galaxy than extinction. Sometimes, there were species willing to become monsters in order to prevent other monsters from succeeding. And, in the end, that willingness to embrace darkness in service of light was what made the Deathworlders the most dangerous and most necessary force in the galaxy.